Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical land.
Today's guest is an old colleague, a service design lead at Fjord the Innovation and Design arm of Accenture. We talked about innovation, we talked about culture and change and how you meld all of that together. So enjoy the conversation and please welcome to the show, Leigh Gamon. Hey, Leigh, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good, Jens. How are you?
Good. It's great to have you. It's fun to have another ex-colleague with me.
Yes, very good to see you. And I miss working with you already.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Same here. Yeah, unfortunately, we haven't seen each other for over a year now.
Over a year.
Yeah. Shit.
Yeah.
Time is
flying.
A long time. So before we go into design and innovation topics, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What is your story?
Sure. So I'll start a little bit back to small little Leigh. But when I was younger, I, which you probably won't be surprised by, I was always a really creative kid. And I was always trying filmmaking one weekend or drawing another weekend and making things. And I really wanted to see what kind of opportunities were out there. So when I was young, I'm from Australia, and you get a certain score at the end of high school, and that score is representative of, you know, what your future is going to be, basically. It's a little bit how it works in the US, I think. Yeah. So there's a lot of expectation of what you get is going to, you have to decide already what course you want to get into, where you want to go. And from my understanding, being this kind of creative kid who didn't quite know where I fit, I didn't really see myself being able to fit in business or in science. So I just worked hard and took a chance, and I went into a creative arts degree, which is kind of like a liberal arts course, and studied art history and film theory, which I just loved and took in and learned a lot about philosophy and psychology and things like that. And from there, that kind of took me into another degree in design, and specifically more like a communication design or a graphic design was the focus. And when I started working as a graphic designer, I realized very quickly that that didn't really gel with me so well. I guess I was kind of always asking the whys behind why are we even doing this? Does this company even need this? Is this necessary? And those kind of whys started taking me in different places. So I started realizing that I actually did have a passion for working with businesses and working in what I would have, younger me would have considered a non-creative way, but working more with like larger organizations and understanding how businesses work and understanding how big systems work and things like that. So I worked then as from starting out as a graphic designer, I went pretty quickly to more UX UI and then to interaction design, and then now ended up in service design at the moment. And I'm sure there'll be another 3 or 4 things next as well.
Yeah. Then maybe let us know a bit about you from a private perspective, if you're up to. At least sure. One perspective is like you're not living anymore in Australia. So how did you end up in Copenhagen, in Denmark?
I still ask myself that, but I'm still not 100% sure. I always knew that I wanted to move somewhere else and just experience a different culture, different lifestyle. My grandparents were Lithuanian. My parents are from Zimbabwe and South Africa. I was born in New Zealand and then moved to Australia when I was 3. So I kind of had this family history of living in different places and understanding different cultures. So my husband, Luke, got an opportunity in Copenhagen he's a scientific researcher, and he got an opportunity at the University of Copenhagen. And we kind of like looked at each other and went, we're moving to Copenhagen. Where is that? Oh, in Denmark? Great.
Somewhere
Didn't know
in
anything
Europe.
about it. Yeah. So we moved here 4 years ago, and thinking we'd try it out. And now we have an apartment here and a 7-month-old baby here. And I've been working at Fjord Copenhagen for the past 3 years. And so far, Nordic life is treating me pretty well.
So that's a good point. What is different from a life perspective, living in Denmark and or living in Australia? I know just a lot of people would love to go to Australia and move there without even have ever been there. So what is your perspective on that? What is the difference coming the other way?
I find that so funny. I've had so many people here say to me, "Isn't Australia a paradise?" And I'm like, sometimes, but it's, I think Australia really is an amazing country to live. I do truly believe that. But I would say what has served me well here compared to Australia is 100% work-life balance. This is something it's commonly talked about for people that live in Denmark or in Scandinavia. There's such an expectation that your outside of work life is incredibly important, and you're a whole person. You aren't just your work ambition. I think so. There's a lot of something called Presenteeism in Australia, which is it's important to be present even if you don't have anything to do. And I really hate that mindset, that mentality, because a lot of the time you see people not achieving as much anyway, because they're trying to lengthen out their day. Whereas here, what I love is if it's summer and, we have such a short Danish summer, if it's a really good day, it's understandable if you want to leave work early and go jump in the canals and have a swim. And if you need to go home to your family and be a bit more flexible with what hours you work, things like that. I can't compare that. So that's been amazing to me.
Yeah, I can tell you the other way around is way harder. Now being back in Germany, where everything is more towards the Australian way of working, and thinking it's quite interesting to see the differences.
Yeah, and I can only imagine that if you switch back, you just have to be strong in yourself with setting your boundaries and knowing that you're going to be more effective.
Yeah.
In shorter times,
definitely, and you kind of need to put your boundaries for yourself, and maybe even not make it public, because people are just not getting it. Like what you stop working at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
How is that possible? And even worse when you're entrepreneurs, like what? You're not working 24/7, which I do sometimes, but it's quite interesting to see that.
But you also, especially when you're working with things like innovation, you have to go with the natural flow of your brain and your energy, because otherwise you're just going to burn out straight away before you've even started.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's go into it. Innovation. Let's start very, very high level. What is innovation for you? What is your personal definition of innovation?
Oh, what a lovely broad question, Jens. Innovation to me, this might not be the most exciting answer, but I think innovation is doing something that hasn't been done before. So it's as you say, it's connecting the dots between a range of different things that have been done in a way that is unique and novel and creates a new result. So being able to take from different industries or different areas of science and art and the many disciplines of the world, and being able to put them together in a new, unique way.
If you take this into the business context, so we together and you have been working with small companies and very, very, very big international corporations. How do you see the difference in how innovation is applied in the different company structures and companies?
It's a good question. I think that there is the obvious that you can often get things done quicker in a smaller company. And if you have the desire to test things and to try things out, there's less of a value chain that you have to get through in order to be able to do that in a smaller company. But I think the ability to make change and to affect things is unparalleled in a larger corporation. So much so that's why I want to work with larger businesses, because I think that we all want to make a better world. We all want to make more change. And I think that a lot of the time a lot of the negative things that are also happening in our world are caused by large corporations. So being able to work in a more humane way with them, or in a more a way that kind of looks at all of the facets of the kind of story, I think even though it's slower, and innovation is slower in that sense in larger organizations, I think when you get it right, it's far more effective and larger scale, obviously.
When you start saying change, of course, I need to jump on that. So
go for
it. You're a master of change. At least I've seen you in a lot of awesome projects where you literally you orchestrate the change with the people you work with and with the clients you work with. How important is change when it comes to businesses, and then of course bridging that to innovation?
So if I'm to understand your question, I would say that in order to get people to innovate, you have to change behaviors in some way. So change often comes from, you can't do something innovative without expecting that there's going to be a toll you have to pay. And that toll normally comes as changing behavior, because that is the hardest thing to do, as we know. It's hard to do within ourselves, and it's even harder to get other people to do it. Next to impossible sometimes to get other people to change, especially if they don't want to. So for me, change is all about mindset. It's about, if you say that you've seen me orchestrate change, what I like to think that I can do is I try to consider what mindset shift do we want people to have along the way. So if I go and work with an organization with the people, the first thing I'm looking at is what is their current mindset, and how people always say they want innovation. They will always say they want to do amazing things, and to if you question how far do you want to push this idea or push this impact that you want, they'll always say, we want to be the best. We want to do something completely different, something new. The first thing I'm then looking for is, does this person have a growth mindset naturally? And you can find that out in having conversations with them about their own life, as I know you're also very good at, and understanding the person outside of their work and outside of the brief that they've given you. And you can start to get a sense of, does someone believe that behavior is fixed, or do they believe that it's able to be melded and changed? And if you're working with people who have this idea, if you hear phrases like, I'm not good at drawing, I can't do this, I can't cook, I can't, I've never been good at so-and-so, that's always a sign to me that there's a fixed mindset going on there. And then immediately my thought is, how can we, over time, get someone to change their mindset, or a team or a group or an organization to change their mindset by seeing that they can do it themselves, for instance, and kind of leading them to those realizations without having to try and drill it into their heads, because that can be quite condescending and quite, it doesn't necessarily always work that way. Yeah. So for me, it's about behind the scenes drawing up a a mindset shift that we want to slowly happen.
That's a good one. So is it more process or is it more culture?
Oh, I love that question. What do you think?
I was about to say you will ask me. I think it's more culture, to be honest. But the process will impact the culture, and therefore you can work with both. But the culture in the end will make it long term stick.
Yeah, and it's kind of what's first, the chicken or the egg in that sense.
Yeah.
I would say culture's first. So
agree. I think it's already there. So it doesn't matter where, if it's more than one person, people are building culture in any or the other way. So there's always a perspective of culture, and if there, let's say, a forced change from the outside comes in, then the culture will adapt to that change.
Whether for better or worse.
Yeah, exactly. That's for me, it's obvious that there will be something happening, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And I think that's the interesting part, is like we did is working with change, working with specifically people, because for me that's the ultimate is like interesting part, working with people and helping them to understand changes. Sometimes, like we did, making it visible. By making it visible, people will be able to jump into that change and go through the change curve and understanding how that works.
Yeah, and go on.
No, go.
We're both such interviewers and researchers. Yeah. The bit that when you talk about making it visible, the bit that I find really interesting is how you make visible a culture to the people themselves in a way that doesn't scare people and doesn't seem like you're overstepping as well. Because in every organization, they have power dynamics that are at play, and they have kind of this tacit culture, or a culture that's not necessarily expressed or talked about, and it's definitely not on the company's homepage when you go look them up and you look at what are our values and our culture. It's certainly not there, but you learn it pretty quickly when you start somewhere, and that's normally the first thing that a new employee will do when they go to a company, is they start to try and understand what's not being said and what are the expectations and where are the power dynamics of this place. I quite enjoy slowly bringing those to light and pointing those out, and or a mix of pointing it out myself but trying to get other people to point it out to each other, and kind of unearthing those skeletons openly, because that's the only way that you can kind of get past them and start to actually make a difference. And so I think there's making it visible in a way where you can make processes visible and you can make research visible and things like that. And then there's making culture visible, which is something that, we don't really get, as a design consultant, I don't really get requested to do that. But I know that is the only way that we're going to be able to fulfill the initial brief or job.
So if we let's play out an example. So there's a company and you get the brief of, let's say, the CEO, the executive management, whoever is in charge. Hey, we feel that we don't have an entrepreneurial culture in our business. How would you approach that?
So immediately, that's firstly the fact that someone thinks that, and that there's a CEO out there that's pointing that out, is already fantastic. I think if they can see it, that's a really good sign, because often there's a bit of a blindness with that. So immediately, I think you need to look top down and bottom up at the situation. A lot of people talk about culture needing to be a top down thing, and I get really bothered by that, because that's making the assumption that there's one person or 10 people who are able to make a difference in a big organization. And I personally have issues with that, because I think that everyone has the ability to make a difference and to change a culture. But there's different ways to do it depending on where you're at and what kind of status or rank that you're in. So I would do initially just interviews, talking to all the people who are at in the executive level and understanding from them, and then going throughout the whole organization to the intern who's just started week 1 and understanding their perspective. And then pulling that together and understanding what are the differences in the perception. So there'll obviously be questions from the CEO of why aren't people being more entrepreneurial. I'm telling them you go out and be entrepreneurial, and yet people still feel like they can't. So there is something to unearth in there that's not being said. So I would probably go do interviews to start that out. And obviously the interviews can't be asking things outright necessarily. It's about getting there in a slow way, in a very considered way. So using different kind of design research tools and different methods of doing that, maybe getting people into different situations and scenarios where you can even see them play out. And then holding a range of workshops with people of varying groups. Maybe just have one just the executive level, and then just a middle manager level, for instance, or something like that. And then doing a big one where you're getting a range of people in one room, and observing the dynamic there and getting people to do different activities where they start to play that dynamic out for you in front of you, and being very observational about what you see, and then what I would do is consider that and start to point things out in a kind of slow way at first, and then building up a bit more. And then from there it would be about kind of designing together some programs and some things that are coming out of that to try different approaches to getting people to feel more comfortable and entrepreneurial so that they can start that. And then working with some co-design, because I think co-design is always important in seeing a culture shift, so that people feel who are working bottom up can feel like they understand it. It's not something that's being told to them, but it's something that they've taken apart in designing, so it makes sense to them and they can understand how they would work with it. But also working with different coaching practices. I know this is something that you feel very strongly about and you're very good at.
Thank you.
Working with different coaching practices and coming up with a solution that's about a long-term support of people as well, so that any behavior change takes a while and isn't going to happen overnight and won't happen with one project brief that you might get. So for me, it would be about setting up the right people who can help enable other people.
How much is trust part of that whole thing for you?
What do you mean by trust?
Trust inside the organization.
Trust of people to each other?
Yeah.
I mean, trust is, it's a great word that I think doesn't really encompass everything that there needs to be from others, because sometimes there's trust, but sometimes there's respect. So I think trust is only going to come from time and experience. So if you have a new team, you're not going to have the trust there, for instance. But I don't think that you can't do something innovative without that trust set up necessarily at first.
if we turn this back to innovation, so what is the difference for you? It's like innovation culture and entrepreneurship culture. What is the difference for you? If there is a difference.
I haven't thought about it before, so it's a good question. But I often see entrepreneurship culture as often like led by individuals. So we often talk about entrepreneurs. So in an organization, if you're talking about a larger organization, you see that there is specific entrepreneurs, people who have look and act different to others, who kind of guide something through from start to finish in a really successful way, because they have that kind of startup ideology, or someone who's able to, you can imagine that they'd be really successful starting their own business externally. I see innovation as more something that needs to come from partnerships, maybe. Yeah. So I know I haven't actually thought about that too much. So
that's fine.
Yeah. So I don't have a picture perfect answer.
if we go back to corporations and companies, what's working with innovation, what's not working, and what are the main barriers of it's not working? From your perspective, of course.
So main barriers of something is not going to work is always when there's a false mandate to do something. So you have a company saying we want to do this new innovative program or this new innovative thing, but you don't have people feeling like they have the mandate to actually go ahead and do it. So mandate can look like many different things, but just a lot of it is based on fear and risk aversion, and people have different motivations. So there are people who are afraid that they're going to lose their job. There are people who just want to be able to go home to their children at the end of the day. There are people who their ambition is everything. So I would say you need to consider who it is who's guiding these things and these innovative areas, and you need to be able to make them feel comfortable as an organization that trial and error is okay, so that if something doesn't work immediately, they're not going to get rid of someone just to make a statement about it, and that it's also about consistently improving on it and coming back to it. I would say this is a huge issue where there's a budget worked out for a year for a program. There's no budget in the foreseeable future after that. So it's expected that everything is done within this 1 year's budget. Yeah. And then once that year goes by, they try to fit everything into that. There's nothing around maintenance and optimization and feedback and working on that. So yeah, I would say that that's the biggest issue.
So leaving the innovation world a little bit, I mean, it's still attached to it, but when I have a designer on the podcast, I need to ask as well, it's like, what is design for you, and how is design different from service design to other design ways of thinking? Let's start with design. What is design for you, and what's maybe for those? I most probably have a lot of business listeners, and they see design of something artsy. So what is design for you, and how could you explain that in a business world understanding?
Let's see if I can do it. So design to me is creative thinking, and if you're someone who puts it at their core to think in creative ways and in different ways, then it doesn't matter what the medium is or the output looks like. It can be counted as design. So, for instance, you can design a a brand. So you can kind of design a logo, and that's a visual design and graphic design, and something that people often attribute to the term design. But you can also design a service. So that's looking at a service on offer. What do interactions look like with different people at different moments? What does the transition between someone being on a website to someone being in a store look like? Things like that. So you're designing an experience in that sense. And then you can also design a organization or a culture as well. So I would say, to me, design is just creative problem solving. And what I like to put on that is the element of obviously visualizing is a really key one with design, because we're visual people, but it doesn't have to be. It could also be appealing to people in other ways, like audio is another one, or their own experience of being part of an experience of their own, so that they get that understanding. So I hope that answers your question, but I think you could have a business designer, as I would say that you have been in the past. So you could have a visual designer, or you could have a service designer, which is more what I focus on. And normally the kind of service design lens that I put onto things is research. So it's understanding the problem as a whole, taking more of a anthropological kind of view of things. And then sorry, you're going to get emails from anthropologists complaining that service design isn't anthropology.
That's fine.
But taking more of that research lens to things, and then combining that with an understanding of the design world and of art and of culture and of behavior and people, and being able to put that together into designing an experience at different touch points and different interaction points for people.
Yeah.
If that still sounds like a lot of jargon, you can just let me know.
No, it's good. It's good. I can still cut it out if I want to.
Oh, you can
No,
totally.
I will not. And what I like specifically when we work together, it always starts, one part is with the problem, which is similar to innovation. Innovation is often a way of solving problems, solving things in different ways. And at least in my opinion, it's also always focused on a personal things, like people, customers, whatever you work with. And then it's often their underlying needs, dreams, and desires, which are not on the surface, which not everyone sees straight away. I think that's where we have been working brilliantly together, at least in my opinion, where digging into that and understanding that will help you to find different solutions, will help you to find innovative solutions and solve problems in different ways. And I think that's where for me, in essence, is that's a change, bridging that towards the change, which enables change. If you look really deeply under the hood, what's going on, instead of just brushing the surface and say, yeah, it's okay. I think
absolutely, and that's an area that I choose to focus. Yeah. Because that's the area that I think is the least understood and the least is given the least attention, but has the most impact. But just to add on to that, I think that the something that I forget to say, because to me it's just obvious, is that you also absolutely have to have an incredible design at the end of it. A design being either a really strong product or and visuals and communication, and all of that has to be incredibly high quality. And you can't skimp on quality, because people notice it and it completely affects the way people think about things. So it's really about, to me, the background and what you're mentioning, really around the strong element of human-centered service design, is making sure that you have everything set up in the right way. All the whys have been answered, so that design can shine and can just make sense to people. So you have to get the backing there before you can have the impact with the final design.
Yeah. What is your point of view on? There are a lot of people out there who have no understanding of design, like I have had it 2 years ago. So what are things, easy tools, easy ways of thinking everyone who is listening to this, watching it, could do and think about, hey, I can be a designer myself?
Mm-hmm. So one is just be really strong with your presentation skills. And again, a presentation doesn't have to be a PowerPoint or a keynote, but the way that you visualize information has to be really strong. So whether that's you being able to quickly draw something up with a pen and paper that gets across to people. I know that this is something
that's one of my specialties.
Yes, exactly. It's even just getting some quick sketching lessons, I think, is an incredibly valuable thing for people to do. You can do a sketchnoting course or something like that, where it just teaches you how to draw stick figures. Honestly, stick figures can be incredibly powerful if you can just show a bit of expression and show a bit of movement with them, for instance. If you can visualize what's in your head on paper or on a computer screen, you're already doing something incredibly powerful, because a lot of people can't do that. So people talk very conceptually about things and abstractly about things, and it doesn't get through, and they wonder why people aren't on board with them. And it's often because people just can't have that. They can't visualize, and in their mind's eye, they can't put something together in that way. So being able to, I would say, visualize, whether you're sketching, whether you just learn how to make really good presentations, or maybe if you're not into PowerPoints, which, I certainly could do without doing so many of those. It could be videos, or it could be creating great audio, or doing something that manages to get your point across. And the hardest part of that is getting your thoughts in order. So that's a huge skill, being able to tell a story from start to finish. And I would say that that's the first part of being a good designer, is just sitting back and saying, what story am I trying to tell here? So, watch some films and get some inspiration from different types of cinema as well,
Yeah, and I certainly learned a lot working with you and the other colleagues as well. And it's so simple often. I mean, we haven't done that, but in a coaching session, what I now always do with clients, I always have a canvas structure and something visual, which because specifically in this online world where you meet on Zoom or on Teams or whatever digital platform you meet on, it's like you just see the face. You can't just in front of you draw something that the person can see. Of course, you could do that, but a lot of people are just not doing it. So just having a visual understanding of what the person is saying in my coaching practice makes a huge difference. So sometimes I was just engaging with the owner of the business, and we discussed about strategic topics and dream customers, whatever. And while the person was talking, I was basically making a visual in a digital whiteboard, and somehow things are clicking in the other person because they see it. If you just talk, it's just one way of communication, and if you make things visual, it's a huge different level. And that's what I learned working with you and the others as well, that it's so deeply different that makes a huge change. I think that's fascinating for me.
So different, and I think people truly undervalue that.
Yeah.
So no matter what conversation that I'm having, if I'm hearing that if someone is rambling at me, the first thing I try to do is I start slowly getting them, wait, start from the beginning. And then I start trying to visualize that for them in front of them, so that you can make sense of their thoughts and make sense of what's going on. I try to do that for myself all the time. But yeah, it's a very looked over skill, I would say. And it's something that people don't necessarily learn when they go to business school or when they go to university.
Specifically not business school, I can tell you. Okay, slowly getting towards an end. So if you have the chance to work with one project, a project that's enabling a huge change in the whole world, which is it's experienced by every person on planet, what project would that be and why?
Just a small question.
Yeah.
I mean, I would kick myself if I didn't say it had to be something about, I would say climate change, because that's an essential thing that needs to be worked on. So it would probably be about being able to pull together the people from a range of countries, a range of places, a range of disciplines, and come to deal with some systemic issues. So bringing together economists or people that work in the government and people from big corporations, and trying to actually map out the systemic issues of certain things and come up with actual solutions by bringing in the right people. So I often like being a conduit for the right people. I think I can learn a lot more from other people than make it up myself. So just being able to bring those right people in, I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, cool. Looking forward, where will you be in a year from now? And you can answer that on a personal level or business level, or both, as you wish.
On a personal level, I'm going to be running after a toddler, which I'm not looking forward to.
That's fun.
On a professional level, I would like to work more and more with culture in organizations. So, like I said, it's something that I will always do behind the scenes, but I would like to do it more in front of the scenes. So I'd like to be, I hope more and more that we, that at Fjord, we can kind of work with more projects and get asked for more culture specific projects, so that we can deal with that as a systemic issue before we try to bring the innovation in. Because I think you deal with the culture, you're naturally going to start having innovation. It doesn't have to necessarily come from my brain, the innovation. I think it could come from anyone's. So I would truly like to work more and more with that.
Love it. Last question. So what I'm always interested in, how people inform themselves, like books, news, whatever. So how do you keep yourself up to date on the different topics you're interested in?
Oh man, I find being married to a scientist is really grounding.
Yeah, that's helping.
Yeah. Honestly, the people, I have a lot of friends who are designers, but I have a lot of friends who are not designers. And I like learning from conversations with people and from talking to people primarily. That's my kind of first go-to. So understanding what's important to those people and their world. I tend to like to ask, far too many questions about someone else's job. I find that truly interesting, to always hear the details, not just the surface level of what someone tells you. So I like hearing from other people who have knowledge in other areas. And I've got an economist subscription. So, I think economics is also a really interesting area, because that's also looking at larger systemic issues. And then in terms of keeping up with design, I find that just naturally happens because that's part of my daily life. Whether listening to podcasts or following news articles or watching documentaries, things like that. But I think it's important to get inspiration from many different areas, not just the obvious ones.
Yeah, I agree. So how can people reach out to you? Let's say there's someone who is saying, Oh, I have a huge cultural project for you, and you need to be part of that. I would like to hire you, whatever. How can people reach out to you, find you? Where can people find you?
I mean, you can look me up on LinkedIn. Isn't that isn't that what that tool's for?
It is.
Yeah. If you look up Leigh Gamon, you're always. I might be a bit slow getting back to people, but I am always interested in talking to new people and having new conversations. So I'm very happy to have conversations either about big projects or just about someone wanting to have a chat as well.
Yeah. Now we'll put your LinkedIn link in the show notes as well, so people can hook you up and find you and reach out to you.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much being on my show.
No
It
problem.
was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, it was really nice talking to you too.
Cool. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
No problem. Bye.
Bye.
Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land, magical, magical land. To another place where the